grab your keys, and before you've even made it to the door, your dog's head pops up. You try to be sneaky about it. You fail. You're always going to fail. And by the time you're actually standing at the door, they're just looking at you, tail down, like you're about to do something unforgivable. And that's when it hits you, that little twist in your chest, that voice going, "Ugh, I'm the worst." Maybe you've talked to your dog on your way out the door, full on explaining yourself to an animal who has no idea what "I'll be back by 6" means. Maybe you've planned an entire work trip around their vet appointments. Maybe you've paid a dog walker more per hour than you charge yourself, just so you don't have to picture them lying on the kitchen floor at 2 p.m. all by themselves. Maybe you've cut a meeting short or skipped drinks with friends, just to shave 20 minutes off how long they're alone. Here's the thing, nobody really tells you that guilt isn't random and it isn't silly. It's not proof that you're too sensitive or that you need to get a grip. According to the people who actually study this, psychologists, not random commenters online, that feeling is doing something very specific. And once you get what it actually is, you might stop feeling so weird about it. So let's get into it. Okay, but is your dog actually sad the second you leave? Mostly? No. Researchers who've set up cameras on dogs left home alone keep finding the same pattern. There's usually a short burst of activity right after you walk out. Some pacing, maybe a little whining. And then, within a few minutes, most dogs just settle down. They nap. They chew on something. Sure, some hang out by the window for a bit. But waiting by the window is not the same thing as suffering. For a normal, reasonably well-adjusted dog, a regular stretch of alone time isn't the disaster your brain is picturing while you're standing at the door with your shoes half on. Some dogs barely clock that you're gone past a slightly bummed-out look before they wander off to the couch. So if your dog's usually fine, why does it feel like they're not? Turns out, the guilt was never really about them. Here's the twist. That guilty feeling isn't actually an accurate read on what your dog is going through. It's coming from something in you, and that's not a criticism. That's just how guilt works. Guilt is basically your brain's way of flagging a gap between what you did and what you value. You feel it when you think you've let down someone who matters to you. And here's the important part. Your brain doesn't care if that someone is human. Once you've formed a real attachment to something, whether that's a person or a dog, your brain treats a perceived letdown the exact same way, whether or not your dog is actually experiencing it as one. This is where a concept called anthropomorphism comes in. Basically, giving human thoughts and feelings to something that isn't human. People love to roll their eyes at this, like it's some embarrassing mistake you're making. But researchers who study the human-animal bond actually push back on that. A certain amount of anthropomorphizing your dog isn't a flaw in your thinking. It's part of what makes you a good owner in the first place. You imagine what your dog might be feeling, and that's exactly what makes you check the water bowl, notice the limp, or come home on your lunch break because something felt off. The guilt is basically a side effect of the same system that makes you a genuinely good caretaker. There's actual science behind that stare. But here's the thing. Dogs aren't houseplants. Something specific is going on with that look they give you, and it's not just in your head. Dogs are one of the only species on the planet that will reliably hold prolonged eye contact with a human, the same way another human would. Researchers in Japan, in a study published in Science back in 2015, found that when dogs and their owners gaze at each other, both of them get a real bump in oxytocin, the same bonding hormone that shows up between parents and infants. So that look at the door, the one where your dog just stares at you like they know, that's not you making something out of nothing. There's an actual biological loop happening between the two of you in real time. Your nervous system and your dog's are, in a very literal sense, talking to each other. Neither of you has to say a word. Here's the part that might actually surprise you. The guilt you feel isn't really just about your dog. A lot of the time, it's a window into how you handle separation in general, with anyone you're attached to. Think about it. People who feel a lot of guilt leaving their dog often notice a smaller version of that same feeling pop up elsewhere too. Leaving a friend who seemed a little off, rushing off a call with a parent, canceling plans on someone. If your brain is wired to closely track how the people and animals you love are doing, that sensitivity doesn't just switch off because the someone in question has 4 legs. Your dog is often just the most obvious, most frequent trigger for a pattern that was already there. One that probably existed long before this particular dog showed up in your life. And that's not a bad thing, by the way. It usually just means you're a genuinely conscientious, empathetic person. The issue isn't the empathy. The issue is when that guilt starts running on bad information, when it convinces you that a totally normal, healthy separation is somehow cruel. So what does normal alone time actually look like? This is where a lot of that guilt is stuck on outdated info. Most healthy adult dogs can handle being alone for a reasonable stretch, generally somewhere in the 4 to 6 hour range, without it turning into a welfare issue, as long as the basics are covered beforehand: a walk, food, water, a safe space to hang out. Puppies and dogs with actual diagnosed separation anxiety are a totally different conversation. And if you think that might be your dog, real distress, destructive behavior, nonstop barking or crying, that's something to bring to a vet or a certified behaviorist, not something to just push through on guilt. But for most dogs, in most households, being alone for the length of a workday, especially bookended by a walk before and after, is not the crisis your guilt keeps insisting it is. Here's a reframe a lot of behaviorists suggest: your dog does not experience time the way you do. There's decent evidence that dogs can tell roughly how long you've been gone. They'll often react differently to a 2-hour absence versus an 8-hour one. But they're not sitting there watching the clock, running some sad internal monologue about being abandoned. That version of "my dog is missing me," the one with the tiny tragic soundtrack playing in your head, that's mostly a story you're writing for them. The dog who greets you at the door isn't traumatized. They're just excited. That's really it. That distinction actually matters, because guilt built on a wrong picture of what your dog's going through doesn't help either of you. It just makes you feel worse without making their life any better. Okay, so what actually helps? A few things researchers and trainers keep coming back to. Predictability does a lot of heavy lifting. Dogs, like a lot of us honestly, do better with routine than with uncertainty. So a consistent pattern around leaving and coming home tends to lower anxiety way more than some big emotional goodbye. And weirdly, some behaviorists actually recommend making your departure a little boring and low-key on purpose, because a long, tarry send-off can end up telling your dog that leaving is a big deal, which is the exact opposite of what you're going for. A tired dog also tends to be a calmer dog, so a walk or some real playtime before you head out does way more for them than standing at the door apologizing ever will. And some owners find that leaving something that smells like them, a worn t-shirt, an old sock, in the dog's bed helps bridge that gap a little, giving them something familiar to settle into while you're gone. What to actually do with the guilt? Maybe the most useful thing you can do with that feeling is just relabel it. Instead of treating it like proof you're doing something wrong, treat it as proof of something true about you. That you're genuinely bonded to this animal, that you take the relationship seriously, and that your brain cares enough to flag it every single time. That's not a character flaw. If anything, it's the same wiring that makes you show up, pay attention, and take care of the ones you love, no matter what shape they come in. So next time you're standing at the door, keys in hand, dog staring up at you like it's the end of the world, take a breath. That look isn't a verdict on your character. It's not proof you're neglecting them. It's just two mammals with a real bond, having a small, completely normal moment of goodbye. Your dog's probably going to be curled up asleep within 20 minutes, and you'll probably still feel that little twist in your chest anyway. That's fine. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. It just means you're paying attention. If this helped you feel a little less guilty about your next school run or 9 to 5, let us know in the comments. Does your dog do the guilt stare too? And if you want more science-backed breakdowns of your dog's behavior, subscribe to Paw Mind. We're back next week with another one.